Hi, I'm Jackie Tantillo, and this is Should Have Listened to My Mother. Thank you all for listening, wherever in the world you're listening. All of us at Should Have Listened to My Mother really appreciate your support and help with spreading the word about this show. We all have unique stories to share, and perhaps we can enlighten one another in some small way by doing so. And I want to say hello, like I usually do, to all my listeners listening to KPPQLP in Ventura, California. That's 104.1 FM. And you can stream on the MyTuner app and on capsmedia.org/radio. As I mentioned, my guests share their unique stories of their relationship with their mom or significant maternal figure in their life. And in just a minute, I'm going to introduce you to an author who's very accomplished. She's received many accolades and endorsements, but what I love even more than that was that she was a very successful high school special education teacher for 35 years. That just warms my heart. She spent 12 years as a university adjunct graduate professor. She's earned her doctorate in education and completed postdoctoral studies at Harvard University. Dr. Marni Foderaro, welcome to Should Have Listened to My Mother.
Oh, hey, Jackie. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
It's an absolute pleasure. So you reached out to me and expressed a desire to share stories of your relationship with your mom. You have many similarities. She inspired you at a young age, and I only know part of the future, so what happened in your life. So how about if we start off with your mom's name?
Sure. My mom's name is Elizabeth Ann Hill Waldenmeyer Hansen.
Wowie kazowie. Bravo. Okay, so Elizabeth Ann, at a young age, encouraged you and motivated you. Can you tell us a little bit about what aspects of your life were touched by your mom?
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to. And it's just an honor to be on your show. I love what you do. And I think we all need to honor and focus on the positives and, whatever experiences we had with our mothers. They certainly are such a large influence on our lives. My mom encouraged so much in me. She encouraged learning and creativity and, to express yourself in writing. And so those were things that stayed with me my entire life. She was a high school teacher and a college professor, just like, I am. And just like her, I went on to earn an advanced degree. I went on to, be involved in writing. She was an amazing writer. And just like her, as I'm finding out later on in my life here, we had similarities as far as we both experienced marital domestic violence. And, even though I have focused on that a lot and realized that that's part of my life's journey, I'm so excited just to focus on the positives that she instilled in me. And I've got some funny stories about how she went about doing that. She was extremely creative in her approach to get me as her child to write and to learn.
Do you have siblings?
Yes, I've got two brothers that are younger than me. One has transitioned and passed away at the age of 41. And then I have another brother. So I was the oldest.
And did your brothers and your mom have a similar closeness in relationship as you did, or was that a mother-daughter special bond?
It's really hard to say. I mean, I believe that mothers they love their children unconditionally, but I think that there are unique dynamics to their relationships with each individual child.
And do you have children of your own?
Yes, I have two adult children. So
you have this commonality of your passion for word.
Yes, with my mom. Was she a lover of words and just extremely witty. And oftentimes, she was approached things with me as a kid in a way that was really hard for me to understand. It was almost like sometimes she would challenge me as if I was older than my real, age, chronological age. So some things just seemed above my understanding level, but it would come in its own time. Like as the years would pass, I would really get it, what she was doing and what she said and what this word meant. But yes, she was definitely a lover of words, extremely intelligent, and yeah, it had a huge influence on me.
What was her, if you know, I don't know if you know much of her childhood, what kind of experiences did she have a child that, with her mother maybe, that encouraged her and her passion for writing and the word?
I guess I don't know a whole lot of details. You wish that while family members were alive that you asked them these questions
I know.
to get information. You wish there were diaries to read and that type of thing. But definitely she had to have been encouraged in a positive way by her parents and her mother, because she went on to earn a master's degree. She's from Florida originally, or I guess North Carolina area. They interchanged in the South. But she went on to earn a master's degree at Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which was kind of unheard of for people in her time and her era, as well as the area that she grew up in. So, yeah, so she definitely, had some encouragement there. I know she was an English major. She was a very, very well-known high school teacher in Broward County, Florida. And then she went on to teach English at the college level at Stetson University in DeLand, Florida. So, I know she had to have had encouragement, or she wouldn't have been able to pursue this advanced degree. And she could have gone on, I'm sure, but, her life path didn't take her that way.
And so when you were growing up, she was a teacher most of the time, or did she do that later on when you guys were a little bit older?
Actually, she did that before I was born. So she was a teacher for many years before I was born. And when the job that I remember her being at, I mean, if your listeners can't figure it out, she has passed away. It's been many years, but she was a newspaper reporter, for the local News Sun. And so she would go to city council meetings, or she would just be on the beat, or she'd cover different stories. So she was a newspaper reporter, and I remember her stories being front pagers of many local editions of a newspaper. Prior to that, and I do remember this because I remember her, getting on the train. We grew up in Lake Forest, Illinois, and she worked downtown Chicago at Nelson Hall Publishing. So she was an editor there. So I do remember that she was involved always with the written word.
And did she make the choice to not work, to be home to raise you guys for the most part?
I think she did a combination of taking care of us and working as well, which, a lot of mothers didn't do at that time either.
Way ahead of the curve, right?
Right. Many times you were, so many families, had this traditional where the mother just stayed home and took care of the kids. And I shouldn't say just stayed home, because to me, I think being a mom is the biggest job there is in the world. And to be able to have that opportunity to do that and not have to work outside the home is just, a wonderful blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was awesome, though, with some of the things that she would do to encourage my learning.
Tell us.
Oh, my gosh. Like, for example, there was a time that I wanted a 10-speed bike really bad. I had those fun bikes with the banana wheels and the banana seats and the big handlebars with the fringe. And, I loved that bike. That was a lot of fun. But there was a time I was getting a little older, and I wanted a 10-speed bike. And my mom would not just buy me a bike, even though I think she had the means to be able to do so. But she said, okay, Marni, if you want a 10-speed bike, every time what I'm going to have you do is really research what kind of 10-speed bike you want and to learn about the different, companies and brands and the details and the costs and that type of thing. So she said, I'd like you to go. This is, way before the days of computers and that type of thing, where you could research things, electronically. She said, I want you to, at least once a week, go over to the library, which was probably about a mile walk. And back in my childhood, we walked everywhere, or rode our bike everywhere. I mean,
in Chicago area, snow and sleet and rain and forest.
It certainly didn't matter. We were, very healthy because we got out there and, we weren't driven from place to place. But anyway, my mom said, okay, so I want you to go to the library and I want you to research consumer reports. And for every article you read, I want you to write a summary of what you have learned from that. And for every summary, I will add $5 to an envelope for you to earn your way towards your bike. And I think my bike cost like $85, the one that I wanted. It was a Schwinn bike. And, I knew I even wanted a yellow color bike, and we figured out how much it was. So even though she said, just once a week, go at least once a week, I really wanted that bike. So I knew to walk to the library and get another article and research it and read it and write a summary and bring it home. And little by little, I earned a 10-speed bike, but it wasn't just given to me. I had to earn it from researching and writing.
Wow. So she combined everything, not only the research, the writing thing, the motivation, the responsibility, the desire to accomplish something that you really wanted. She taught you all of those lessons. And you grabbed that gold ring, my dear.
Right. And that really stayed with me. That was such a, looking back now as an adult, what an amazing way to encourage your child to check out the library and look at different, research articles, and then, put ideas into your own mind by summarizing it. So she really was a teacher, not just a mom. Another great experience that I remember where she, in a very creative way, instilled my love of learning or writing or processing. I wanted pierced ears. Now, a lot of other people were getting pierced ears, and I really loved earrings. In fact, I would, on a piece of notebook paper, draw various types of earrings that I would love. And even to this day, I still love earrings. So that all worked out. But I was not allowed to get pierced ears. I think I wanted them when I was 12 or 13. And I was told I needed to wait till I was 16. That was the magic age for so many different things. And of course, I probably threw a fit, or, I was very persistent that, no, I'm not going to go along with that. I really wanted pierced ears. And actually, the end result wasn't really what she expected. There was a real twist to the end, of me getting pierced ears. But my mom said, okay, Marni, if you want pierced ears, what I want you to do is to write an essay about how you can get along with your brother better.
My gosh.
And I want you to write an essay about, and it had to be a one-page essay. And of course, I wanted to skip lines, and I wanted to use the biggest printing that I could use so that I could stretch out that page, because she only said it was a page. It wasn't so many words or whatever. So I really milked that one, and when I got bored, I got extremely creative using various colored markers for each word and trying out different styles of handwriting. But that was just another example where, I wanted something, but it wasn't just going to be handed to me. I had to work for it. But in this way, I had to actually write out different things about my relationship with my brother that I did not, who I did not get along with. And, so she was using a creative approach to try to help me process, my relationship with him. And then the twist to the story is, I did all that. I did all that writing, and but the reality was I still wasn't getting along with my brother, even after all that, effort. And, I just, please, 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 Mom, can I get my ears pierced? No. Well, I did it anyway. One day when we were at some sort of meeting in a building, I didn't have a needle, but I had a straight pin. And I went into the bathroom, and it took me about half an hour with one ear, but I pierced my own ear. My earlobe. And then after that half an hour, and it was extremely painful, even though my friends said, you've got to ice your ear and you have to get, cut a potato in half and put a potato behind your ear so that the needle, has something to go into. I didn't follow those directions either. I guess I was a little bit of a rebel. I wasn't always following directions, but then it only took about 10 minutes for the next ear. So I didn't tell my mom that I pierced my ears, even though she was in the other room, at some sort of meeting, that she had. And someone had given me two kind of posts that I could put in my ears. But what I did on my own, without even telling her, I walked down the road a few blocks to my pediatrician's office. And I went to him, didn't have an appointment or anything like that. And my parent wasn't with me. I just went up and I said, I pierced my ears, but I want to make sure I did everything okay and that I won't get an infection. And, back then the doctors would see you without all these permissions. And, it was definitely a different time in this smaller town. And so the doctor saw me and basically gave me some antibiotic ointment and said, Marni, you did a nice job. I didn't tell him that I wasn't supposed to be doing this. He might have figured it out, but he gave me antibiotic ointment. And so I felt, gosh, I'm being responsible as a 13-year-old, with my, doing the right thing and making sure that I would be okay. And then I eventually told my mom, and I was punished. But the punishment was something I could care less about. And she never knew that. In fact, I don't think I ever even told her that I could care less about the punishment. So at that time, my brothers and I were each going to get our room, a very small room. I mean, it's almost the size of a big closet, each of our rooms. But we each had our own little space. And we were each going to get our rooms redecorated. And back then, it was bright color paneling. So I was going to have an orange bedroom with shag carpeting and the orange, paneling on my wall. And one brother was going to have blue, and then the other brother was going to have green. And because I was the oldest, I was going to have my room remodeled before them. But my punishment was that I would have to have my room remodeled last. And I acted like, oh, that was so terrible. Oh, well, I'll accept that. But in reality, I got my pierced ears, and that's what I wanted. And so I could care less about that punishment. And I probably should have. And I'm sure at this point, my mom figured it out that, I could care less. And so anyway, that's just another interesting story that I remember with my mom.
Was she the main disciplinarian?
She was when she was around, and when, actually, when you say disciplinarian, I think I grew up very differently than a lot of other friends and peers in my neighborhood, because we were just kind of left to kind of raise ourselves in many ways. My father was a college professor at the local college. I grew up in the 60s, so it was like really free and easy. And, kind of express yourself and, just take care of yourself. There are positives to that because we really were on our own to be creative. And, they never even cared if we got on our bike and went 2 towns over. And, there were, but the downside is I don't remember regular dinner times. In fact, so many times the cupboards were bare. I don't remember getting guidance for certain things that really I think kids need guidance for. So it was a bittersweet pro and con kind of growing up. I really don't think that there was much discipline. In fact, I was always striving for structure and discipline because there wasn't much. And so that's why I grew up to be organized and to, look at accountability for things, or always make sure, keep detailed records when it came to my children's scrapbooks and medical books. And, I kind of be compensated kind of because I didn't have much structure growing up. I became someone who responded to structure. And that really served me well as a teacher because you have to be very organized, to be a teacher. And I was.
Did you intentionally or did you take pause when it came to raising your children as far as you were not going to do exactly what you just said, mentioned all the freedom and the lack of discipline or guidance? Did you say, I'm going to do it more this way because that's what I feel I was missing?
I think that I incorporated some of what I was raised with, and then also kind of my own ideas of what I thought would be healthy and productive for children. So I think, I used kind of a combination approach. I always instilled with my own children a love of learning and a sense of self-expression and creativity. So I always had an art project going on, or I always took the kids to museums to explore the world. I love to travel and take them, even if it was just on the train to another local town, just to explore a different environment. So I think I incorporated some of these positive aspects, and, and actually definitely getting out in nature. My parents exposed me to the beautiful natural world, and we would, however, here's another writing example. We would go on bird walks and we would look at the various different birds. And back then, we didn't have cameras. We would have a sketchbook and we would sketch the birds. And then when we got home, we would, use our colored pencils and color them in. So we would see blue jays and cardinals and, of course, various other birds. But my parents would have us keep a log on the different birds that we saw, and we'd have to research them. This bird is obviously native to the Midwest, and that type of thing. So we got to explore nature, but we also incorporated writing with that as well.
I think it's magnificent. You're using all your sensories, the visual, the writing, the putting down on paper, and then doing the research. I mean, maybe that would be in this day and age, I don't know if kids would have the temperament to do that.
Right. Definitely. They might not. Another very cool thing that when I was younger, in the couple homes that I lived in, we got to have a wall that was a self-expression wall. We called it the graffiti wall, where we had it painted really funky, psychedelic colors, and we could write anything we want, all over the wall. And of course, our neighbor friends thought this was so cool. They could come over to our house, and not only could they jump on trampolines and swing from ropes that were hanging in our bedrooms, they got to write on a wall. And so and sometimes, oh gosh, I remember a couple times I actually put swear words down. When you're first learning swear words, it's kind of a thing to do is to write it or to say it, with no one knowing. And so sometimes on my wall I would put swear words, and then at some point we might cover it up, paint it over, and then start fresh. But I, even with my own children, did the same thing. I found, I made it a little more structured. It wasn't a whole big wall and it wasn't psychedelic, but they had a section where we either had chalkboard paint that you could use chalkboard, but I found that you really had a more easy time of writing if it wasn't using chalk. So I just said, what the heck, let's just use Sharpie markers. And, you can always paint over it. But I did some of that even with my own children because that was such a fun expression, and just something unique.
I can totally see you as a teacher.
Yeah. Oh my God. I had so much fun being a teacher. And
oh my gosh.
As a teacher, I wasn't really teaching content or, I was really teaching the child and trying to instill the love of learning and to help these children, because by the time I was teaching high school for the most part, by the time these kids were in high school, they, were diagnosed as having a learning disability or the behavior disorder, they called it. They probably went through so much feeling bad about themselves all these years with school being challenging, whether it was socially or academically. And I thought, wow, this is a great chance at the high school level. One kind of last chance, because some of these kids wouldn't be going on to college and they'd be going into the workforce or whatever. I wanted them to feel good about themselves. And so I wasn't someone that would mark up all their writing with a red pen, and give low grades and make them feel bad. I really wanted them to feel good about themselves. And I believe that they should explore writing without all these constraints and without all these corrections. And then after they get their thoughts out and feel good about what they put down on paper, then they can, work on doing corrections.
Wow. Want to encourage anybody and everybody when they hear this podcast to take all of what you've just shared with us into mind, because it's not only a teacher in a classroom, but it's meeting people one-on-one. We're all different and we all have different needs. And if we're more understanding and patient, compassionate toward one another, we're all teachers.
Most definitely. And I looked at this and I even said to the kids, don't think of yourself as having a learning disability. Think of it that we all have different challenges in our learning and we all have different ways that are good for us. Some people are visual learners. Some people learn by doing. Some people are auditory learners. They really don't need a visual. That gets confusing for them. They'd rather hear it. So, I just tried to encourage the young adults that I was working with to find out their strengths and just capitalize on that. But to give themselves credit for surviving all those years in formal school, and that they can do wonderful things in their lives, and to try to be independent and self-sufficient, and, don't let other people dictate who you're supposed to be and what job you're supposed to have and, how you're supposed to act. You can be your own person.
Elizabeth Ann, we're still thanking you today.
In fact, I've written a 5-book series called True Deceit, False Love. And that was after my 2020 Best Books award-winning spiritual fiction, God Came to My Garage Sale. But I've gotten involved in some anthology books where I contribute a chapter or an essay. And, I've done 5 of those, and I really had no plans on doing any more. In fact, I kind of wanted to transition, like I'm kind of done with writing books. However, I've got a 6th volume of True Deceit, False Love that I am working on. And then I'll call it quits with the writing.
Dr. Marni Hill Foderaro, thank you for joining us. And her website, you can find more of her information at godcametomyGarageSale.com. So much more to share about you. Perhaps we can have you back soon.
Well, thank you so much, Jackie, for having me on your podcast. And you're just a wonderful person. And I just love what you are doing. It's definitely a calling. And I know you do so much more than just this podcast with your, radio shows and your voiceovers and all the things that you do. you're also someone to keep up with and to look out for.
We will be back next week with another episode of Should Have Listened to My Mother.